Hi everyone, it's Lisa Rubel from Quilty Zest, and I am here tonight with a Facebook Live showing how to make this orange peel placemat. And I'm just gonna wait a minute or two to let some more people join in, and then we'll get started. And in the meantime, you can check out the placemat. Okay. There we go. So my husband and kids right now are outside seeing if they can see the northern lights, because all I've been seeing on Facebook is that the northern lights last night and tonight were going to be great, and I'm going to go out after we're done with this Facebook Live and see if I can see them. Oh, we've got a couple people joining. We've got Carolyn and Dawn and Mimi. So nice to see all of you. I'm going to switch over to the other screen so that you can see me as well. Oops, let's get that out of the way. Got a cord in the way. There we go. Okay. Oh, we've got Vicky as well from snowy northern New York. Yeah, it feels a little weird to have snow before this far before Thanksgiving, doesn't it? So we had a little bit here in Michigan over the weekend, and it is gone now, but I know it will be back. So, oh, Swati's here too. Fantastic. So glad that you all could join us tonight. We are, like I said, we're going to be doing this orange peel placemat. And I made this version first as my sample and learned a couple things from it, and actually came up with a slightly different way to put it together, which I'm going to talk about tonight. Oh, we've got Rita joining as well. Fantastic. And Alma, nice to see all of you. And what's fun is that there's several of you that have come multiple times, so that I'm definitely recognizing your name. So glad that you keep coming back to watch this. It's nice to have a steady group watching. So I'm going to show you the other version that I put together, and I'm really excited about this one. It's slightly larger, the blocks are, but I made it into a wreath and added a bow and some little red, I guess, berries you could call it. So it's kind of a modern wreath. And so I will talk a little bit about how this goes together as well. Oh, Swati wants to know where my son is. Benji is on hiatus. He's in that tween phase where he's less interested in being a part of this, unfortunately. But I'm going to see if I can get him to come back for December. We're going to do one more before the holidays and do some Christmas ornaments. And I'm going to see if I can get him to come back, and because I'll tell him that there have been people asking, because I've seen that a couple times. But I will show you his latest sewing project up on my design wall here. He made this last weekend, and it's all improv piecing. He just cut a bunch of strips. I finally let him use the rotary cutter and sewed them together and then trimmed it into a square. So I don't know what he's going to do with it, but he's very excited about it, and I think it's great. Yes, I am going to be sharing the dimensions for the wreath. Uh-oh, Dawn says the screen is freezing up for her on and off. Sam's here too from Florida. Is anyone else having that freezing problem? If you are, can you put a comment in so that we have an idea if it's me or Dawn or just the Facebook gremlins in general? Because it could be any of the above for sure. While we wait and see if anyone else is having screen freezing issues, I'm just going to point out behind me I have my Strippy Improv holiday quilts, which is something I'll be talking about in my newsletter and on my blog throughout November. and December, and that is a fun 4-block project. Rita says it's okay for her. Okay. But if you want to know more about that, go to my website, quiltyzest.com, and sign up for my newsletter. If you already get it, you'll be hearing about it. Or you can follow me on Instagram or Facebook at quiltyzest as well. So, all right, we're going to get started on this project here, the orange peel placemat. I'm going to switch to my other camera so that you can see my cutting table. And so the orange peel is a classic quilt block, and it is commonly made by curved piecing. So you cut these orange peels and then you cut the background pieces and then sew them together using curves, which is not impossible, but it can be tricky to do. So what I decided to do was to do a version that was applique. And you definitely see a lot of that, but what I did is I put a half square triangle underneath it so that I can have the two, so this is a square right here, a block, and then I can have the two colors underneath. And you can see I even did that on the wreath as well. I used some low volume prints, but I've got, if you look, you can see it's two different prints. I've got the stars here and then these interlocking rings and little squares and then snowflakes out here. So it just adds a little extra element to it, whether it's very subtle like in the wreath or whether it is a little more obvious like in the orange peels here. So, and I'm going to talk about my favorite way to, I'm going to move this, my favorite way to piece half square triangles, and that is using these rulers. They're called the Ideal Seam Guide from So Very Smooth, and what they do is eliminate the need to constantly be drawing the line on the back of your squares to make, because normally you take a ruler, draw the line, and it just takes a lot of time. So what you do is you take a glue stick and you just run a thin line right across the diagonal of your square on the right side of your fabric. Megan's here tonight too, and Rebecca. Nice to see you both. Then you put your second square on top and just press down where you have that little glue line. And then, so this has a little bit of sticky on the back, and so it will stick to your fabric. So what you do is you put it down so that it runs from one corner to the other corner. And so it sticks to the fabric, and then because those squares are glued together, you can see they stick together as well. And so then what you do, and I'm going to just pop over to my sewing machine, sew it, and come back, but you stitch using this as a guide for the edge of your foot on your machine. Let me just do that, and I'll be right back and show you what that looks like. Okay, oops. So my ruler came off because I have too much stuff on my sewing machine. But so you can see I used a contrasting thread, so you can see I've got this stitch line here. And then I put the second ruler, I happen to have two of them, but otherwise you can just switch sides with one of them on top and pull the first one off. And then I'm going to do the same thing, use that ruler as a guide and stitch down my two layered squares. Oh, okay. And this is really helpful if you're making a lot of half square triangles because you don't need to draw the line over and over again. So then you keep the ruler there and cut it, still using that ruler as your guide, and you have two half square triangles without having to draw any lines. So it's really a time saver. And what you can also do, I just did one to show it to you. So if I put these back together and we pretend I haven't done them yet, and you've got another set, you can actually set up 2 at a time and then just sew both of them, which really speeds the process up. So again, it's called the Ideal Seam Guide from Sew Very Smooth, and it works out really nicely with half square triangles and flying geese. So that's how I'm making the half square triangles, and now let's move on to this project. So I see we've got a couple more people who have joined. Fantastic. Nice to see you. So I pre-made some half square triangles, and this is going to be my placemat, and I did this one in more like Christmassy colors, whereas this one in my Find Your Way fabric would be great for any time, or I thought kind of Thanksgiving colors. But this is what this one looked like before I put the orange peels on. And what I'm going to do differently tonight than with this first version is when I did these, I made my individual half square triangles, and then right away I fused my orange peel onto them. And then I put interfacing on the back, and then so I could do the zigzag stitch, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And then I sewed them all together, and it got really bulky. And if you look, a lot of my points are not as nicely joined as I would like. So what I did instead for this version tonight, which is what I recommend for you, is to get all of your piecing done first, and then we'll do the fusing. I'm seeing a couple questions about the ruler. I bought it at the AQS show in Grand Rapids. I would imagine there are definitely quilt shops that do have it. And if you Google it, you should be able to find it either by going to their website, which is Sew Very Smooth, or just Googling the Ideal Seam Guide. It does come in a couple different sizes. It's really nice to have 2. You can absolutely do it with 1. Okay, so now that I've got the piecing out of the way, I'm going to talk a little bit about the ThermOWeb products that I used for this project. And first of all, we have the, here we go, the HeatnBond Light Sewable, and that's what I'll be using to fuse my appliqued orange peels onto my pieced background. And then I used the HeatnBond Lightweight Interfacing, because if you try to zigzag stitch your orange peels just onto plain fabric, a lot of times it will pull the fabric in and it actually shrinks your project and makes a weird kind of little fold, really is the best word, in it. So if you put the fusible interfacing on the back, it provides a little more stability so that the fabric doesn't pull in. Oh, thank you, Dawn, for looking about the ruler. And then, of course, we have pressing paper to protect your iron and your ironing surface as you're doing your fusible applique. And then the last 2 things, which we'll talk about at the end, are the Fusible Fleece and the Basting Adhesive. And I use the Fusible Fleece as my batting in these projects, and it fuses to the back of my project, and then I use the Basting Adhesive to fuse my backing fabric on as well. So one more thing I wanted to tell you for doing half square triangles. So this is another tool that I have, and it's called the Strip Stick. And the website is the stripstick.com. And I've got to show you the back of this project, because I do not normally press seams open because it's a lot more work, and frankly I have a better chance of burning my fingers. But when we've got all these joins where right here you can see how many seam allowances we have overlapping from where 4 half square triangles come together, if you press your seams open, it eliminates a lot of that bulk. So what this handy little thing is, it's like rounded on top and flat on the bottom. And so when you go to press, you put your seam on it like this, and then start, you know, opening it with your finger. Let me grab my iron. Oh, my cord is caught. Okay. Okay, and then get my ironing board out. There we go. So, if you put your seam on that rounded edge, and then you can just open it with your finger and kind of just push it as you go, and that rounded edge really helps to press your seams open. So like I said, I normally do not press my seams open, but for this project it's pretty important to do that so that there's not so much bulk where all those points join. Okay, and I gotta say, having the Oliso that has the automatic lift up is really nice, because as I was moving along this, I kept putting it down and I wasn't having to do the tilting up and down. So now we're going to talk about the applique pieces, these orange peels, and I pre-cut these out. If you go to my blog post about tonight on the ThermOWeb blog, there's a template PDF to download, and I've got 3 different sizes of orange peels on there. For the placemat, I used the 3-inch orange peel template, which goes on a 3.5-inch square. And then for the wreath, I used the 6-inch template. So this was like a 12-inch finished piece. And then I put a 4-inch version on there as well, because 4 inches would make an 8-inch square, which would be a really nice size for a pot holder. So when I fuse, so I traced my orange peels onto the paper side of the HeatnBond light adhesive. And what I do with these orange peels, because I'm going to be doing a bunch of them, is I put them all in a row like this, and that helps me to use the fabric efficiently. But then also, because I'm going to have to peel the paper off of all of these, having them in a row, I can cheat, and I just peel back the edge and just peel it back just over the tip of each one. And so that way, after I cut them out, instead of having to work hard to, not hard, but instead of having to kind of peel back that point, I've got them all kind of pre-started there. So I do that and then just cut out each of the orange peels. And for a placemat, you will need, there are 24 orange peels, and there are 24 of these half square triangle blocks. And I set them up so that I did a dark green and a lighter green and a dark red and a lighter red. And then I oriented them so I have these little groupings of the light in the center and then the dark. So if you look at, if I go back to this one, you can see I did it with gold in the yellow in the center and then the orange on the outside, but same kind of thing where I grouped them together in little 4 patches. You could also do just a really scrappy look, and that would be fun too. And then I picked 2 different prints. I like Christmas that's a little, not necessarily your traditional bright red and green, so I found these 2 fun prints in my stash. It's a little more olivey of a green and a little, almost not lime, but lighter green, and then a red and a pink. And so I picked out a couple of these shadow blush fabrics from Benartex to put in the background in the reds and greens. So I am going to peel off the paper from 4 of these and give you a little preview of what it will look like. And I'm going to alternate them, and I decided to put these darker ones on the green because I like the contrast of the red with that green color. And so I'm just going to slide this over a little bit. And what I want to do is, what's really nice too is you can see here, like I don't have these points lined up perfectly, but they're going to be covered with the orange peel, so it doesn't matter. But you want to get the tip of your orange peel going into the corner of the block. And so I'm going to just do 2 at a time. And you'll see I've got space out here because that's my seam allowance for when I put the binding on. So I've got 2 set up here. I like where they are. And I'm going to press them in place. Yeah, I'm just actually looking at the Facebook page, and I really like how the light and the dark colors for those half square triangles, they really play nicely off each other. And then I'm going to do another set. And you know, I don't always do a perfect job cutting. And this one seems like it's just a little tiny bit too big. So I'm just going to trim it just a little bit. Okay. And then set that up. And like I said, the advantage of doing this, oh, this one is too, of doing this after you have it pieced is that you can make sure that the orange peels truly go from point to point. Whereas otherwise, if your piecing's a little off, they may not be exactly how you want them to be. And then I'm going to press that down. Okay. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of what it's going to look like. I just dropped all of my orange peels on the ground. And I'm just going to lay out another 4 of them without fusing them, but just to give you an idea of what it's going to look like as this comes together. There we go. I think it's going to be very cool. I'm excited about this one. So that is the basic technique. I'm just going to move the iron out of the way, and then we'll talk about the wreath and about finishing. Okay. So I'm going to go back to this one to talk about the finishing, and then we'll move on to the wreath. So what I did after I finished, or what I'll do after I finish fusing all those orange peels on, is to fuse a piece of the lightweight interfacing to the wrong side of my placemat. So I will fuse that in place, and that gives me a little bit of, like I said, it gives it a little bit more thickness, and so then when you do go to do the zigzag stitches, it doesn't pull at the fabric. It just makes it a little more stable, I guess, which is a great thing for stabilizer to do. So, and then if I hold this up a little bit, you can see I did kind of a loose zigzag in a coordinating thread color for the orange peels. And what's nice, again, I told you these I did beforehand, and so I did each orange peel on a square. And but when I changed the order of assembly, and I pieced the squares together first, and then fused the orange peel on, like I'm talking about with the placemat, what also was really neat is that I could just stitch all the way around this outer edge with my zigzag, and then I had to do a little bit up here, but same here, I could stitch all the way around the inner edge, and so it just gives me a smooth zigzag line as I do the stitching. So I did the zigzag on this, I had it all assembled, and then I did the Fusible fleece and then the backing fabric with the basting spray. And for quilting, because this is kind of stiff with the interfacing in it and the applique and all of the seams that I showed you on the red and green version, I don't even know if you can see on the back, but what I actually ended up doing is I just stitched in the ditch with a matching thread on each of the seam lines here. So it's really more about holding the layers together than about adding a decorative element, because we've got a lot going on here already in terms of design. And so that I could do minimal quilting and then bound it. So we are having Thanksgiving with 20 people, so I have just 19 more of these to make in the next 2 weeks, right? Less than 2 weeks? No, 2 weeks, yeah. Just kidding. I'm not making 19, but they are fun. And like Megan said, yep, placemats for every holiday. You can just change up the colors. Oh, which reminds me, I wanted to show you my false start. And that was this one right here. And I was really excited about these fabrics. And you can see I made a bunch of half square triangles. And I was just going to do it scrappy. You know, all these fun sort of, to me, they look like, you know, holiday prints. But I thought they would look really cool. And then I was going to do the black orange peels on top. And I stopped, I did this as a test, and I stopped after this one because I realized that I actually liked it better when what was catching my eye was print or color here instead of the black, because I preferred it like I did with, well, where did it go? Oh, with this one where I had a little less going on in the background and then the prints on top. But I did want to show you what this looked like, because you might like this look, and now you can see what it looks like when you've got your busy in the back and then your solids on the top. So this is what it looks like to do it in reverse. It ended up not being my favorite, but now you see what that looks like. So always fun to experiment and see how different colors work together. So yes, Judy, I'm definitely joking. Not making 19 more, not at all, but I'm actually not hosting, so I don't need to worry about what the table looks like. So, the wreath. I'm so excited about this. I had this idea after I made the orange and teal and gold one, and it worked out exactly like I envisioned, and I'm super pumped about it, so I'm glad to hear that you all are excited about it as well. So, on the template page, I used the 6-inch orange peel template. And like I said, this is going to be just a little wall hanging. The 4-inch size would be great for a hot pad or a mug rug or just a smaller wall hanging, but I wanted the slightly bigger version. I also have the templates in there for the bow and for the little berries. So I did the same technique here. I chose low volume prints for the background, but as long as you have something that contrasts with your wreath colors, that's great. I think it also would be really fun to do scrappy and do 4 different greens. And if you wanted, you could even do a placemat version of this where it was just a bunch of wreaths. The bow would not work at that point, but a bunch of wreaths would be a really fun placemat as well. And so I did 2 different greens from Benetex's Shadow Blush collection, and then I alternated them so that I've got this sort of design going. And then I fused the bow and the berries on top before I did any of the stitching. Oh, Rebecca wants to know what I mean by low volume. So low volume prints are, they tend to be a lot of whites and creams, and they're fabrics that have a print to them, but it's very subtle. So if you look here, you know, if you look at these from far away, they read as white or as light colored, but they do have a pattern on them. It's just very, very low key and subtle. So those are called low volume. And it's something that a lot of modern quilters like to use for, instead of having something have an all white background, they'll do, you know, scrappy white background, and it just adds some extra interest to it. So that's what I did here. And then put my big green orange peels on top, fused on my bow and my berries. And then that's when I did the stitching. And so what I did is I did the green first. So I did all around the outer circle like I mentioned earlier. And then this little bit up here. And then I did the inner part here. And I did that because the bow is in the front, right? That's above the wreath. And so by stitching with the green first, then when I went and did my stitching with the red, that would overlap the green stitching. So that puts my wreath further in the background and my bow further in the front. Does it matter that much? No, but do I like it that way? Yes. So I did zigzag around my 4 berries and around the bow, and then I put Fusible fleece on the back so that I can put the backing on it. And that was, and you can actually, you can see my stitch lines through because the Fusible fleece is white and then my fabric is white, so you can kind of see where I did the zigzag. I have not done the backing or the binding or the quilting yet because that was as far as I got, and I haven't really decided how I'm going to finish this. If I'm going to do, I may just do a little bit of quilting just across like that midline to kind of hold it in place. I don't want to go through the bow. So I haven't really decided yet how I'm going to do that, but then I will bind it and either hang it up or give it away for the holidays. So if you download those templates, you'll have everything you need to make either the wreath or a placemat, or like I said, the 4-inch version would make a nice pot holder as well, or just a smaller like mug rug type thing. And that is tonight's project. I'm going to switch back to my face. So like I said, the traditional way of making orange peel blocks is with curved piecing. There's also a really neat folding technique you can do, but applique is definitely the easiest way to do it, and you get really great results from it. And I like being able to play with the with the background colors and add in that little extra bit of dimension with the lights and the darks. So I will look forward to seeing what you all come up with in terms of color schemes and fabric choices. So if you do end up making a project using the orange peels, definitely share it on the Facebook page so that we can see it. I know after my last Facebook Live, I'm not going to remember who it was now, but somebody made those little Halloween stuffies like either the same night or the next day. And then the one before that, Mimi had done the Happy Fall project as well. So it's so much fun for me to see when you all do these projects, and maybe we'll all have a wreath before the holidays too. So super fun. So are there any other questions I can answer in the comments about this project, about the half square triangles, anything that I used tonight as I put this together? If there is, pop it in the comments and I'll see what I can do to come up with an answer. Oh, and then I did want to show you too, while I wait and see if there are comments. I looked, and I guess I didn't do a tutorial for this shirt last year, but I made this shirt, and it's just fusible. I had some buffalo plaid fabric. It says Mary and then 3 trees, because I saw a similar one on Amazon and decided that I could make my own. So this was one of my holiday projects last year. And if you were late in joining, my other holiday projects are behind me. These are my Strippy Improv patterns, and it's a reverse applique technique that I've talked about a bit through some Facebook Lives and some blog posts that I've done. But the pattern has 11 different blocks to choose from to make a really cute holiday quilt. So if you do follow me on Instagram or Facebook or through my newsletter, you'll be hearing more about that for sure. And if you want to follow me, it's Quilty Zest on both Instagram and Facebook, and my website is Quilty Zest, and you can sign up for my newsletter there. Alma wants to know about the half square triangles for the wreath. Yes, so I cut 7-inch squares, and then when I trimmed them down to be 6.5-inch square half square triangles. So general rule of thumb, whatever your your unfinished half square triangle, so before it's sewn together, 1 inch, 1/2 inch larger is how big you cut your square. So I cut them at 7, made them into half square triangles, and just trimmed them down to 6.5. And then when they're pieced in, they finish at 6 inches. And then for the placemats, I started with 4-inch squares, made them into 3.5-inch half square triangles, and then once they're pieced in, they measure 3 inches. So hopefully those numbers weren't too confusing. I've got the on the template, it talks about what size square you need to put these different templates on, and then the half square triangles would just be a 1/2 inch larger. So, oh, Mimi says, great ideas and little time. I know, especially this time of year, right? This is, I saw a meme that said something about in October, I'm going to make gifts for all of my friends for the holidays. And then December 1st, I have one friend, because there's just never enough hours to do all of the project making. And I see Dawn picked some winners. Fantastic. Rita and Abigail, congratulations. Well, thank you so much for joining me tonight, or watching this on the replay if you're doing that. And yeah, we're going to do one more before the holidays, and that is on Wednesday, December 3rd at 7:30 Central. So I hope you'll join me then, and have a great night.